This episode is brought to you by Indeed. You're ready to move your business forward, but first, you need to find the right team. Start your search with Indeed-sponsored jobs. It can help you reach qualified candidates fast, ensuring your listing is the first one they see. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs are 90% more likely to report a hire than non-sponsored jobs. See the results for yourself. Get a $75 sponsored job credit at Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply.
Doug.
Here we have the Lemur Emu in its natural habitat, helping people customize their car insurance and save hundreds with Liberty Mutual. Fascinating. It's accompanied by his natural ally, Doug.
Lemur? Is that guy with the binoculars watching us?
Cut the camera. They see us.
Only pay for what you need at libertymutual.com.
Liberty, 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 liberty.
Savings vary. Underwritten by Liberty Mutual Insurance Company and affiliates. Excludes Massachusetts.
The Last Show with David Cooper, where we apply quantum mechanical psychoanalytical astrotherapy to your problems.
What could possibly be worse than catching Uranus at a bad time? Even doing it and solving a 40-year-old mystery while doing it. English, how does it work? I'm here with astrophysicist Dr. Jesse Rogerson to chat all things science, including the planet Uranus. What did you think I was talking about? Get your head out of the gutter. Welcome to the show, Jesse.
Thanks, David. Let's get into Uranus.
A gas planet, if I'm not correct. And again, I'm talking about the planet. I'm not talking about my gastrointestinal tract. Uranus and Neptune have not been widely mapped. They have not been widely explored, and they are very, very far away from us. Not a great planet to get a close look at. So what have we recently learned about Uranus? Fine, I'll say it the way it's supposed to be said.
Yeah, it's unfortunate how far away they are. We've only visited each of them once by the Voyager 2 probe as it flew by in 1986, 1988, I think, for the next one. And you don't get much. These are flyby missions. You don't get a lot of information. You're literally just flying by the planet. You get like a week or two of good measurements. And when they were there at Uranus in 1986, they measured a belt of electrons around the planet. We have this too on Earth, but it was sort of noticeably more electrons than you would expect around a gas giant planet. So they thought that this was a unique property of Uranus, that Uranus just had extra electrons, and they were trying to figure out what that meant. Is, according to planetary models, it shouldn't be like that. So what's unique about Uranus? And that persisted for years and years and years. Until they've re-looked at the data and compared it to situations that can happen to us, and found that, well, probably Uranus was not actually a unique situation. It wasn't a unique thing to Uranus. It was that there was at the moment probably some solar activity that Uranus was dealing with that created this like large amount of electrons around Uranus. So it's sort of a funny thing when you pigeonhole yourself to just a 1 week of time, you really can't learn much about a planet.
That's exactly right. Like the other day I had a house party and one of my girlfriend's coworkers decided to go into the master bath to go to the bathroom. I guess our guest bath was used. And I was in there and she opened the door. And there I was, and I hadn't said hello to her before, and I was like, "Oh, hi!" While on the John, and that was the first impression of me that this one coworker got. Now, that was a very accurate first impression, but still, if you were to judge me based on that one interaction, you would make maybe a mistake, and that's exactly what happened when we got this electron reading of Uranus. And it just seemed like this bizarre planet, but it turns out maybe we just had a limited sample size.
Yeah, it's a limited sample size, much like the person visiting your John. And
you were really wondering where I was going to go with that one when I went down in that rabbit hole. You're like, how does this relate? How does this relate? Why are you talking about the toilet?
You always bring it back, and that's what's really important.
Yeah.
Yes. The other important thing about this story is that even if we knew at the time that the solar activity was interesting and was unique, or something, some solar event was happening, we didn't actually have a good sense of how that affects the atmospheres or the magnetic spheres of planets. So, we've had like 40 years of like relearning and understanding how solar wind affects our planet and how that creates belts of electrons, energized electrons. So it's that after spending 40 years learning physics, we've been able to, look back at other data and try and make some new conclusions. And I think that is probably the biggest thing here is we should always be sort of revisiting our publications after some time and as scientists and be like, wait, does this still make sense given the context we've learned since? So that's, I think, the biggest lesson of this one. So that friend of yours needs to go back and open that door again to see if you're in the John next time and recalibrate to see if they're really getting the true David.
And probably they are. But yeah, no, I'm just imagining the press release of a NASA scientist saying, 40 years ago, we caught Uranus at a bad time. Let's keep doing some space stories. Now, when we think spacecrafts and the computers on them, we don't think of these computers as like an attack vector for hackers. We probably should, though, shouldn't we? Like our space computers, not just in spacecraft, but in satellites, like they need to be defended if they're at all connected to the internet. Also, if they're not connected to the internet, they could have viruses put on them when they were programmed. We got to worry about our space computers, don't we?
This is like the when it comes to computers, like you work with computers far more than I do. You know this content, you have the background on this, and they're so vulnerable, and it takes so much effort to cover all the back doors and patch all the holes and make sure there's no leaky systems or anything. I don't know all the words, you know better.
No. And also there's attack vectors on computers that we didn't know about 40 years ago. So just like every old computer is vulnerable, we discovered this new way to attack them, and they all either have to be patched or not. And a lot of the code on spacecraft and satellites is old code. It's verified code in the sense that it works, but maybe not that it's protected against hacking.
And it's incredibly how old it is. Like we were talking about the Voyager 2 probe just a couple of seconds ago. That's still an active spacecraft. It was launched in 1977. Like what was coding like in the early 70s when they were putting the spacecraft together? Like totally different world. So we sit on Earth. We have our computer systems. We beam light radio waves to these spacecrafts to talk to them, and that creates that infrastructure issue that we're talking about here. And this is a story that was actually published by a security company, I think, to show how good they are at doing this. But they found a vulnerable hole in a set of software that is about that how scientists sort of make sure they are credible to connect to the system. So their credentials, and they found a hole that's been present there for 3 years so that you could talk to the spacecraft, and nobody exploited it, thankfully. And then they were able to find it and patch it. And the reason I really like this story is because it wasn't a human that found it. Well, it was a human that was guiding a machine learning program, an AI, to go search for holes and situations like this in the software. So I think the big piece of conversation here is, yes, there was a hole in the software and it was found and it was patched and it was open for 3 years. That's scary. But look at what AI can do for us when you can like set it on issues you don't even know exist. You could say, "Hey AI, here's some operating instructions. Go look at this huge, massive software, all these lines of codes and look for holes." And a human would take forever to do that or never be able to do it, whereas an AI can just jump on it, no problem.
In the past, like cybersecurity researchers, they would like try all these attacks in various different ways. It would take forever. There'd be some automation, but not much. Now you can ask an AI to try all these attacks against a computer system. If you're a hacker, you can do that to try to break in. But if you're a cybersecurity expert, someone trying to prevent hackers, you can do it to find vulnerabilities and patch them. There's going to be kind of like an arms race that happens. Most people who aren't nerdy won't see it. But between like hackers and people trying to patch software from hackers, and AI is going to enter this race. I mean, this shows that it has already.
This is exactly what I was thinking about when I found this story, and I wanted to ask you about this. It's like, okay, great. There's a company out there that has an AI that looks for holes, but doesn't that mean that there's probably like 50 more than that, like bad actors that have built their own AIs that are looking for holes as well?
At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
The most pressing science question of our time. Why do cats meow twice as often at men than they do women? We are here with Dr. Jesse Rogerson to try to tackle this one. And boy, oh boy, does it open a whole can of meows. Jesse, welcome to the show.
You have cats, right? Right, David?
I have one cat, although it sometimes feels like I have 100 cats because he has 100 personalities. Does he meow more at me than my girlfriend? He meows more when she leaves the house at the general environment that I'm in than when I leave the house. I think it's because he doesn't like me as much, and when she leaves, he gets upset.
He's just yelling
I think
at you.
I've solved. He's just yelling. He's like, I'm upset. The world needs to know about it. But yeah, I didn't know this until recently that cats with male owners meow more than ones with women. Why would researchers even study this, I guess, is my first question.
They weren't setting out to ask that question. It was a general behavioral study about cats. So it was like everything they do from the moment you enter your home and they greet you to how they approach their food to like when they're happy, when they're sad, when they're angry, how they play. It was a ton of stuff. And they only had, this is a small study, 31 cat owners. And they basically had the cat owners report data. One of the things they reported was as they entered their home, they would record their cat on their phones, like video record them, and how they greeted them. And they were just, the only instruction was act normally when you enter your home. And they found that male owners get 4.3 vocalizations, it's like meows and stuff, over the first 100 seconds, whereas the female owners got 1.8. So this noticeably, it's like half, right? And this was not controlled by the cat's age, gender, breed, anything, right? It was just male owners got yelled at more, right?
So this amazing scientific discovery was by accident. It's almost like penicillin. So this doctor was just messing around with mold, and then he realized that, it inhibits bacterial growth. This is almost as important as that.
We almost got there, yeah. It's a good thing these people are doing this. They were quick to say, we have no idea why this would happen. So like, they didn't actually get into depth into that question. Why would they be more vocal towards the males? Although they did make some other observations from the recordings. And you might be interested to know, David, that on average, the female owners tended to give the cats more attention. So as soon as they walked in the door, they were talking to them. They were repeating back the meows. They were more likely to mimic and assess the cat's emotions, whereas the male owners were just coming in the house. And they were just sort of generally ignoring the cats, at least compared to the female owners. And that is, I mean, you can just clearly state that would need to be studied more, but there's a good hypothesis there that the cats were just trying to get their attention, whereas the female owners were providing the attention right away.
So the great scientific takeaway, again, with penicillin, it's that it helps us with bacterial infections and stuff, is male cat owners, be nicer to your cats. Pay attention to them. That could be a preliminary result.
So I wonder why your cat yells when your partner leaves. Why is your cat yelling? Maybe you should just be nicer.
Maybe you should just be nicer. Man, you sound like my therapist at this point. Okay, so every week we take you, listener, singular, maybe intended. We hope not. We hope there's more than one of you. We take your calls at 1-888-505-6644. Get ready to remember that number. I'm going to give it to you again in a second. We take your calls, your voicemails, with general science questions. I'm always encouraging our listener that the stupider the question, the better. Jesse, probably not. And we will play your voicemails on this show and answer whatever science questions you have. Jesse will answer, and I will try to derail him. The number is 1-888-505-6644, 1-888-505-6644. I'll keep saying it, and actually I won't. So, Jesse, we got a few voicemails this week, which
so
we're going to
excited.
play. I know. It's almost like people listen to the show and then call in. And that dude who keeps calling with the heavy breathing saying, ooh, science. You have to stop calling.
Oh, no, that's me.
Oh, that's you. Damn. Good joke on that one. Well appreciated. Okay, here's our first call, and it has to do with water.
I was wondering, with today's technology, why can we not make drinking water out of the ocean? Is there any particular reason why we can't use the ocean water for drinking, like to purify it? That's all I want to say, and thank you, and I enjoy your show.
Well, it's kind of an interesting question because the answer is we can use the ocean water for drinking. But then the next question is, why don't we? And I think that's where things get a little dicey, Jesse.
Exactly. We do it all the time, but it's expensive. So basically, the big issue here is it's got a lot of salt in it, and you have to find a way to get the salt out, or it's going to not be very good for you when you drink it. So there's two major ways to do that. You can boil the water, and that leaves the salt behind, and then you cool the vapor down, and then you get your drinkable water. But the more common way to do it is to push it through a specific type of sieve, a specific type of membrane that filters the salt out. So there's two ways to do it, but all of this takes a lot of energy, takes a lot of effort, takes a lot of infrastructure. And when you sort of look at the overall costs, to build like a plant to do this, and then deliver that water to whoever needs it, you end up like at least doubling the cost. So when you get regular water from aquifers, rainfall, from lakes or rivers or whatever that has no salt in it, that is at least half the price. So because you put all these layers of treatment in, it balloons the cost. No one wants to pay for it, especially farmers who need lots of water. So they want the regular old ways. But we still do this in places that have no other options. Like, for example, in places that are big deserts. Saudi Arabia has one of the biggest desalination plants on the planet. Australia does too. There's a few in the United States. In fact, in my research, I was looking at this. Is such a good question that this listener asked. There's thousands of them, thousands of desalination plants around the world, but they're really only used in places where there are no other options. So the ideal situation is to get water that's ready to drink, and you just do some cleaning of it. So that's a really good question. We definitely do this, but it's just too expensive to do it for the most part.
And I read this fact. I don't know if it's true, but I'm pretty sure it is. To get water from 0 degrees Celsius, so just as it turns into water from ice, to 100 degrees Celsius, just before it boils, to get it to boil takes 5 times as much energy as it does to raise it from 0 to 100. So boiling water is incredibly energy inefficient. It takes a long time to do it. You'll notice you can get your kettle boiling in a few minutes, but to actually get that water to completely turn into steam takes way longer. And so this is why it's not common in places where there's cheaper, less energy intensive options. Okay, our next science question, Jesse. Are you ready for it?
Bring it on.
This one takes us to warp speed, huh? So, like a Star Trek.
Hello, this is Mike from Windsor. Hi, David, and your neighborhood guest scientist. I was wondering, in going to science fiction for a moment, the Star Trek series, they mention 2 systems of propulsion, the impulse, which is sublight speed, and of course warp drive, which is multi-light speed. I was wondering what his thoughts were on, are we ever going to get some kind of a multi-light speed so we can explore other worlds and other galaxies because they're too far away at current propulsion speeds.
All right, we got a minute to answer that one, Jesse. Can warp speed?
So I wish we had 10 minutes for this. The short answer to this is up until a few weeks ago, I would have said this is completely outside of the range of even asking. But there's been some recent developments where the mathematics of general relativity, the curvature of space-time, have been investigated enough to find at least a method by which you could inject energy into space-time, curve it in the way you need it to do it, to accelerate yourself through space at speeds that would appear to be faster than the speed of light. That doesn't mean that you are actually moving faster than the speed of light, just that space-time itself is moving faster than the speed of light. You can do it without breaking the rules. The problem is how much energy you need to make this happen, or whether or not the energy actually exists in the universe is a whole other problem. But to Mike in Windsor, the mathematics do seem to suggest that it is possible. So maybe 100, 200, 300 years from now, they'll figure out the energy situation.
Cool. We got new math to prove maybe we can travel, quote unquote, faster than the speed of light, at least from the reference point of the people not on the spacecraft. Jesse, thank you for being on the show. Always a blast.
Thanks, David.
My name is Jordan, and I'd like to invite you to join me on The Canadian Gothic, a podcast covering stories of Canadian crime, mystery, and the offbeat. The Canadian Gothic blends the spirit of late-night talk radio with the depth of a documentary film, and applies that approach to both developing stories and historical cases. So if you're drawn to the dark, mysterious, and offbeat, search for and subscribe to The Canadian Gothic wherever you find podcasts.
You are listening to Canadian Gothic.